Hey, what's up guys? This is Anthony from Anthony's Customs, and for this video, we're going to be reviewing the Lego Batman movie. So you guys might have seen me mention, I think it was on Twitter, maybe it was on Facebook, that some people told me that it was really good, and some people told me that it was terrible, so I was pretty curious about the movie. I figured, what the heck, I'll go on a discount day, see if the movie's any good, and do a video for you guys, so that you have a little bit of insight if you haven't seen it yet. So here's the thing, here's what you need to know about me. I'm a big Batman fan, so I was expecting this to be pretty fun. I've heard that it was very satirical, made a lot of jokes about Batman, so I was looking forward to that. That kind of thing doesn't bother me. I appreciate it. I'm not one of those fanboys who gets mad as soon as somebody says something bad about a character. So I was looking forward to that. And I was also hoping that this was a lot like the first Lego movie, because I did like that movie quite a bit. I thought it might have a pretty solid story for the adults to watch while the kids looked at Lego characters running around on screen. So it might work for both audiences. And I have to say, this movie did succeed in some ways, but in others it failed. So I think it's kind of a blend of those two perspectives, that it was fantastic and that it was awful. I'm pretty sure both of those sides were being a little bit biased. I'm going to try to give you guys an objective view, and I'll throw in my opinions as we go. But here's the thing. I don't know if this was supposed to be a kid movie or an adult movie. I think they didn't know either. I think what happened was they saw Batman as a really popular franchise, and they saw Lego as a really popular franchise. And they said, let's put those together for a movie, and that'll take care of itself. And that's pretty much all that happened. It wasn't especially funny for kids. There wasn't a whole lot of children's humor or kids' humor or even young adult humor. There was a tiny bit of it, but almost all of the humor in this movie came from references to Batman, mostly through the ages, all the different versions of Batman. Yeah, a lot of it was contemporary stuff like Bane from not so long ago, or even BVS, but most of those references were for the adults. So I'm not sure where the kid part came in. It was really just that it was made out of Legos, I guess, is that it would be appealing to kids, and that it's a comic book character. I think that's it though. So it wasn't very much a kids movie, but then in terms of it being an adult movie, it didn't do much to draw in the adults either. It just kind of had those references and that was it. It was kind of weird. It did not have that kind of deepness, that secondary moral of the story type thing like the Lego movie had. It was very one-dimensional. So it was kind of missing a little bit. It felt like they weren't quite sure where they wanted to go with it, what they wanted to do. And that came across to me. Throughout the movie, I was thinking, none of the kids in here are laughing at these jokes, and then you could hear the adults chuckle because a lot of the things were not like laugh out loud funny, but like, oh, I appreciate that they referenced that or that they made fun of that. So it was very strange. I do think that the movie was successful in that meta humor, making fun of all of the different movies and the franchises and all the different things that Batman's been involved in, saying that, I think it was in one of the commercials, so it's not a spoiler. There's nothing really to spoil in this movie, and I'm not going to really talk about the details, so don't worry, there's no spoilers, by the way. Referencing Batman saying Superman's my arch nemesis or something like that. I mean, that was pretty funny because obviously Superman's a good guy, but Batman is so self-centered and egotistical in these movies, and obviously we have the BVS movie to make fun of. I mean, I appreciated things like that. They did a good job with that, and they were scattered throughout the film. Most of them weren't considerably clever, though. They were just kind of like, well, that happened and we're making fun of it. It wasn't... I don't know. A lot of this movie felt kind of like they weren't sure about how to handle things, so they just kind of threw it all at you to see what would stick. It wasn't bad in that regard, but it was just, I don't know. That's how I came out of the movie. I didn't know how I felt. So it is a Batman movie, and it's generally marketed at least towards kids to a degree, so there has to be a lot of action. You need to have action or it's not going to keep anybody's attention, and this movie did have a ton. It had some pretty odd pacing, some spots where it just kind of died instantly and felt really awkward, and then some spots where it was just bam, 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 constant action. And I could forgive that. It's not that big of a deal. I mean, not every movie's going to have great pacing. It wasn't terrible, but it wasn't great. But here's the thing that did bug me a little bit about the action. With Lego bricks in particular, because there's constant contrast. You don't have any smooth shapes, really. It's all little, sharp edges with lots of contrast within each model of whatever it is, like the Batwing or whatever. Not only was that the case, which is obviously fine, it's a Lego movie, but they had so much stuff happening on screen. You never had something to really focus on. I think the best fight scene or best action scene in the movie was the one that really opened up the movie. And that's not good. I mean, you want the start to be good, but you don't want that to be your focal point. And it really was. None of the action scenes were very cohesive. There was just stuff everywhere all the time, 15,000 different things happening at once. You don't know where to look. So it did get a little bit just monotonous. It wasn't particularly exciting to watch the action because, yeah, I mean, you could figure out what was going on, but it wasn't interesting. It was kind of like the Age of Ultron movie where there was tons of stuff happening, but no like real signature shots, no hero shots, as they say. I think they say that. I don't know. But, it just was kind of like, show me something, not everything type of situation. So there was a ton of action, most of it not that good, to be honest. Normally in a movie discussion / review, we would talk about the acting. Now, since this is an animated movie, there's not a whole lot of acting. It's just the voice acting. And I have to say, Will Arnett does a great Batman. I mean, he's not the Batman as far as I'm concerned, but he's a good alternative. I like Will Arnett as Batman. I think he does a good job. I think most of the writing for Batman is good, and he delivers the lines well, so that's a good thing. The other characters, they were all good. They were fine. I didn't notice anybody that stood out. I don't know about Rosario Dawson as Barbara Gordon. I really like Rosario Dawson's voice, but I'm not sure it suits Barbara Gordon. It wasn't bad, though. It wasn't, like, distracting or anything, so it was okay. Ralph Fiennes or Fiennes or Fiennes, or I'm not sure how to pronounce his name. He did a good job as Alfred. I can't really mention... I'll mention something toward the end that's slightly spoilerish, so just come back at the end if you want to hear about... We'll get there. So yeah, the voice acting was fine. Nothing really stood out. It was good. It was fine. No big deal. No problem, so that's good. Now, here's the thing. Like I mentioned in the beginning, this does not have that kind of overarching theme. It doesn't have very much of a cohesive meaning behind it like the Lego movie did. This movie had almost no plot. The plot was terrible as far as I'm concerned. Probably the worst big budget Batman plot ever. I mean, this ranks up there with, I don't know, George Clooney Batman. It's just a really, really bad... I mean, those weren't even terrible plots. They just weren't good movies. This movie had a terrible plot. It was so far-fetched and contrived. And I get that they did some of the things just to drive home the point of friendship. Batman needs to have friends to do it with other people. Except the most successful thing that happens in this movie is the very first scene, which Batman does all by himself. Most of the movie is making fun of the fact that Batman lets Joker go all the time, so that keeps coming back. And I'm not sure if they're saying it's a good thing or a bad thing. It's unclear. There's no real driving force. It's just a whole bunch of scenes kind of thrown together with this really haphazard plot. It just doesn't work. It's almost like a kid came up with the plot. It's so... There's no focus. I guess that's a good way of putting it. It just feels very forced, very contrived, and just haphazard. Not great. I didn't enjoy the plot in any way, and I think that's the biggest flaw for this movie. If they had a good plot, you could have pretty much gotten away with anything, but the plot was really, really weak. Very, very bad. On top of the plot itself being bad, there were some serious plot holes. And I can't really talk about them too much in detail because it will be kind of spoilery, so I'm not going to say too much, but there are some serious plot holes, which, yes, you guys are probably thinking, it's a Lego movie, get over it. Except the Lego movie had a much more solid story. It was a much more solid film. So this does stand to be compared to that movie more directly than anything, I think. So people are saying this is the best Batman movie in a long time. Well, no, it's really not. It might be the funniest, but it's definitely not solid. So many plot holes and a bad plot for them to be in. It's just not good. And then the worst thing about this movie is the ending. The ending is terrible. It's so bad. It's so... Okay, so here, this is going to get slightly spoilery. Not like... No, it's going to get pretty spoilery, okay? So if you haven't seen it yet and you really want to, now be aware the plot is not dense enough for it to really matter. You're not going to care if you get spoiled here, but I'm putting it out there. If you haven't seen it and you don't want to be spoiled, click away, come back, we'll talk later after you've seen it. So the ending. revolves around Joker collecting all of these bad guys, like not Batman bad guys, like other universe bad guys, like Voldemort, which is funny. That's why I mentioned Ralph Fiennes earlier. He's voicing Alfred, but he's also Voldemort, but he's not Voldemort in this movie, as far as I could tell. It didn't sound like him. Maybe it was. Anyway, you have the Daleks from Doctor Who, you have Voldemort, you have Sauron from Lord of the Rings, you just have all these, and then some dinosaurs and some other things like that. But it's just like they threw everything they could in this movie to try to make it interesting, I guess, and it did the exact opposite. It wasn't a Batman movie, other than Batman was the main character. It was just so much junk happening at the end for this big climax with all of these different creatures and everything. And yeah, there were lots of little references throughout that I appreciated, but overall, it was just way too much stuff happening. Way too much. I didn't care for that. And then, all of a sudden, it goes back to Joker, because Joker wasn't, like they advertise him as being the bad guy, and he kind of is, but he's not really the focal point. He's not in that many scenes, to be honest. He places a bomb that separates Gotham, and it's gonna all fall into the void. Yeah, I don't know. So that's a thing. And then that happens. And then they have to pull Gotham back together by using their friendship and working together. So they all peg into each other like their feet on their heads. Then Batman's at the top. And then he says, Joker, we can't let this happen, blah, blah, blah. And they work together. And all of the citizens of Gotham do the same thing, bridging this big gap, pegging into each other. And then they pull it back together. It was like, what? I maybe that would be appealing to like the youngest audience possible, but I thought it was totally asinine. It didn't appeal to me, and I can't see how it would appeal to anyone else in any way. Every part of it was contrived. So we had this huge action climax that was terrible, way too much stuff happening without really anything happening, and then the resolution was no good. It was this terrible thing, is totally Deus Ex Machina. It was not good. I didn't like it at all in that regard. So really, what it boils down to is this movie was just a whole bunch of quips of funny things, somewhat clever things that you might appreciate, surrounded by a lot of really bad storytelling. I don't know how that pans out. It's nowhere near as good as the Lego movie as far as I'm concerned, which also had Batman in it. Unless I'm going crazy. He was in that, right? So I don't know. Like, it definitely wasn't that good. And it definitely wasn't terrible, but it was somewhere in the middle that felt awkward and unsure of what it was, and that's how I felt by the end of the movie. So I wouldn't spend a full ticket price to go see it. I would spend maybe $5 like I did. Discount day. Go see it if you want to. But don't get too excited, and maybe just wait until Netflix. And that's how I feel about it. I'd like to know what you guys thought. Let me know in the comment section below. We can talk about it. I'm sure a lot of you really liked it and a lot of you hated it, so I'm sure you're going to be mad at what I've said. So let's discuss it in the comment section, and we'll have some fun. So thanks for watching, guys. Make sure you subscribe to the channel. I have new videos up every single day. We talk about, obviously, movies and TV shows and video games and action figures and all kinds of fun stuff. So come back for that. And in the meantime, keep collecting.